Hi, everyone. Welcome to All Out Coach. My name is Tim Mikhelishvili. Happy Monday to everyone on LinkedIn, on YouTube, on Facebook, who's watching, who's following. All Out Coach is a leadership platform. It's a podcast in which I inspire people through the conversations with other leaders across various different industries to stretch themselves, to lift others as well. This is a global approach with a mindset that's deeply rooted in sports and science that I'm stimulating, that I'm promoting with a particular focus on the pharmaceutical industry, but not limited to it. So recently I took some time off. I was on vacation and I want to discuss a topic that came to mind because of some various case studies that I observed, because I had a chance to watch some TV that I didn't before. And so I'm going to talk to you about why we need to redefine politeness in business today. And I'm going to share a few case studies that will depict the role of being polite in critical decisions. And so let's begin with a show, a TV series called Billions that I only had a chance to watch the first 10 or 11 episodes in the past few weeks. So for many of you who may have watched this show or who are familiar with it, you know that it has completed 5 seasons. It was just recently stopped because of COVID, but it will be continuing. And it demonstrates a very real world, raw look at at the corporate world, right? You have this larger than life personality, Axelrod, or Axe as he's known, that is able to manipulate, to scale, to grow a large organization that is essentially earning money for many investors, for stockholders, that helps create strategies due to insider information that it leverages very well, that uses to its advantage. Yet it does it very efficiently, under the radar, if you will. And so the way that this particular charismatic leader, this personality who's very direct, is portrayed is that the viewers, at least in the first 10 or 11 episodes of the first season, are left to sympathize with Axelrod because he's someone who came from nothing, essentially. He comes from a poor family. He is a self-made, self-taught leader in a success story, and so he is somebody who also has many unique skills. He has impeccable memory, recall, and he raises his children and his family. He's a very devout family man. Despite all the opportunities in the world and even many temptations, he's somebody who you want to admire. He and his wife, they make sure that the children are educated. They spent a lot of time raising their children until this one episode that I want to talk to you about, in which he teams up with a colleague of his, with somebody who is cooperating with the FBI in order to feed the FBI some information. But he is a loyal employee, making the FBI believe that he's selling out his boss. And so Axelrod is in it. He has this information from this colleague, but he feeds him small pieces of information that are still not sufficient for him to be arrested. And so he learns at some point that this colleague is stricken with cancer. very bad form of cancer, pancreatic cancer. And he has this conversation, an important conversation in the bathroom, very personal, confidential conversation with a colleague. And he asks him, so how bad is it? What's the diagnosis? To which the colleague responds, well, it's pancreatic cancer. It's pancreatic. I don't have much to live. And so at that point, Axelrod in the series Billions, he tells him, look, I'm going to find you a doctor. He's going to get you the best treatments, even investigational treatments that there are. All right. And the colleague just responds. He says, well, look, you don't have to do it. It's not necessary. You don't have. To which he insists. He says, hey, listen, that's what we do. That's what we do at Axe Capital in our company. You're like my brother. You're my friend. All right. And so you're left to believe that this man right here, this leader, is going to help him. It's going to have his best interests. So fast forward that few months, the colleague passes away. They're at the funeral, and at this funeral, his close friend, his one dear friend, actually shares a story. Shares a story that this colleague had this last wish of living just a few months, living to the new year, living past Christmas, so that he would have that pleasure, that last pleasure of exchanging gifts, Christmas gifts, and so forth and so on. And so then the cameraman cuts back to the face of Axelrod, who's then kind of pensive. He reflects, and then you see a flashback to this conversation, to an important conversation that Axelrod had with the doctor. All right, this doctor, the special doctor that he had a great relationship with. And so the doctor tells Axelrod that, look, this colleague does not have much longer to live. And Axelrod at that point says, well, what options are there? And the doctor says, well, there is an investigational treatment out there. There's an investigational treatment that may increase his lifespan, his life by about a few months. At that point, Axelrod interrupts and says, yes, but it's probably not going to help much, right? And he's already gone through so much, right? So he almost politely suggests, and he indirectly leads the doctor to abandon that decision, to pursue that investigational treatment that could have indeed allowed this particular patient, this colleague of this boss, this mogul, to have actually enjoyed Christmas. So he's the one that makes that decision ultimately, this unethical decision, which is a criminal decision, not only one that may have cost millions of dollars to other investors, as he had done previously to many others, but to the life of this individual. And so at the end of the day, he denies the opportunity or the dignity of the colleague to have enjoyed some quality and in his last days. And so what's strange about this, and what's important to understand, is that the decision that's made is one that is manipulated, directed by someone who's not a caregiver and who's a boss, all right, who has grown his ego so much that he manipulates. And he may have not had any ill will towards this colleague, but he also didn't demonstrate genuine politeness. All right, so there is a need to distinguish our genuine versus strategic politeness, because strategic politeness is being political, and he was being strategic. At that point, he felt like he may have been threatened by the information that was getting out to the FBI, or he wasn't personally vested in the best of interests of this colleague. And that's why politeness alone is important in the business world. It's important and it's critical in opening doors for opportunities, in showing up and being present and at least being considered. But there is a distinction that we need to make between being genuinely polite, and being strategically polite or political. If you talk to communication experts, coaches who have published in this area, right? Goffman, Brown, and Levinson, they talk about politeness as saving face, or the self-image that all of us have, or avoiding threatening someone else's face, right, or self-image, right? But in the type of world in which we live, what that ultimately translates into is being indirect in times that matter. And so we go through our work, our business life, having conversations that mostly do not matter much, that we do not remember. So if you think back to the conversation, most critical, important conversation from which you learned or grew or stretched yourself or lifted others, it's usually somebody being direct, somebody who was probably direct or may have even made you upset. And usually it's the people that are closest to us, our family members, our loved ones, because they don't have that filter, they don't have that boundary, and they are the ones that will provide you with that feedback that you need, that may be upsetting at the moment, but that you will take and you will reflect, and that ultimately is the one that's going to make a difference. And so, and this is why, if you're at a Thanksgiving dinner within a family, or with, let's say, in-laws, or people that invite you for the first time, you're a guest, you don't have to say that turkey is not tasty or it's too dry, right? I think there's common sense and common politeness in those types of situations that will allow you to continue the dialogue and to still be likable, and to, or at least create opportunities for a collaboration, for a friendship, for a relationship. But at the times that matter, people who are genuinely polite know that they have to stand up for their colleague, and they have to manage a conflict, and they will have to be direct at some point. All right? And so that's what genuinely polite people do, who consider politeness not a strategy or a political action, but they consider it a social responsibility. Let me give you another example from the last few weeks, where I was watching a contest, a cooking contest, cooking show, in which all the experts or people who had gone to culinary school had made it to the final, top three, but one of them was an amateur who had never really cooked, being a chef before. And so he didn't do as well during the final, all right, in the season finale. But the judge actually gave him a comment that was polite, but that was indirect. And this was the comment. Let me know what you think in the comments, in your own comments, by the way. So what the judge said was, do you remember when you auditioned? When you auditioned, we gave you a chance. We gave you a chance to participate. And so you made it in that audition. And so you did quite well when you think about it, overall. Okay? So you have to be thankful and grateful for participating in the show. So do the best that you can, take the best out of it that you can. So this is general feedback that's indirect. Okay, that really is not may have not been the kind of feedback that this contestant, this amateur, was looking for. It may not have been uh, what may allow him to grow. And also, it was almost as if he had to be thankful for even being in the final, which, yes, it is an accomplishment, but it can also be interpreted by the contestant as, look, you're just an amateur. You're not a professional. You can't really compete with these professionals. You should just be thankful for that. So it's not that kind of comment, that polite comment. It's not going to stretch that contestant, and it's not going to give them a substantial information on national TV for them to take away. It's only going to get them back to their status quo. And so this is why there are times when you need to provide direct feedback. When the politeness often has a very thin line and may border being offensive almost or insulting. And in particular decisions, in critical decisions, such as job transitions, when you hire someone, when you fire someone, there are companies that are polite in their feedback, or they do not provide any feedback for fear of being sued, for fear of litigation. And this is why I interviewed on my All Out Coach podcast Steve Hertz, who is an owner of a talent management company, who's mentored and who's actually hired many nationally renowned broadcasters in the sports and other industries and TV personalities. And he called his latest book, he titled it, "Don't Take Yes for an Answer." For that reason, because we do not provide enough feedback to people. Or we left them wondering, why haven't they heard back with a decision when they're in a job transition? And that made me think of my first time when I was fired in college. There was this part-time job in a coffee shop, and it was close to my house. It was convenient, and so I went in with the intention of making some extra money and also doing the best that I can, because that's my all-out approach, that I've always used, right? And so I remember washing dishes till late night. I was even being a butler. I was not really onboarded into the company. I was taught how to make coffee once or twice, and that's it. And we know that it takes a lot more to become a barista. Even though my title was not a barista there, I was just an assistant, really. So an assistant, a butler, and so my role was not clearly defined. Yet after the second day of working there and not having any problems with anyone at all or anything like that, I am told by a colleague, a senior colleague of mine who had spent many years there, that he had gotten a phone call from my manager, from our boss, who had told him that was going to be my last day. So he told me, look, this is going to be your last day. But notice that this was the boss's so-called polite way of firing me there through someone else. As many other people, I would have much more preferred to have heard the bad news directly, right? I asked the colleague, I said, is there a reason that I'm being fired? And they said, well, you didn't learn how to make coffee fast enough. So that was the case. And believe it or not, I make some of the best homemade coffee, cappuccino, espresso, after years of learning on my own time. And it's not a job of mine, but it's just something I do at home on the weekends and sometimes in the mornings early. So at least I can assure you, my listeners, my friends, that I do know how to make coffee now. And in fact, I think it's the best in town, but I may be partial. But that's beside the point. The point in this discussion is that we have to understand what our role of politeness is in those critical decisions, no matter how polite we need to be in order to continue to be considered, right? So in critical decisions, we have to provide feedback that is direct, that's going to help someone else stretch themselves, reach the next milestone. So the key point that I want to leave you with here is that we must redefine politeness in business today, from being politically correct to being globally correct. We've learned that throughout the pandemic. We know that what happens somewhere else, in Italy, in China, in South Korea, is now affecting us here in the United States. And we need to be much more agile. And politeness is an incredibly important shade, if you will, or a spectrum of our professionalism. But that's not what is going to make us being remembered unless we're genuine. And when we are genuine, we're polite all the time, including being correct and including being globally correct. So let's be socially responsible in our life as individuals, as business leaders, when we run companies as well. Because the impact of our words, of our actions, have limitless potential, and they travel fast, faster than ever today. That's my message for you, my friends. Let me know your thoughts in your comments, and have a great week ahead. All the best.